thing that I would like us to discuss and talk about is understand the origins of where our opinions and where our beliefs come from. This is really crucial, and a lot of the research has indicated that part of the reason why a lot of conversations go south is because we fail to take into account somebody's perspective, somebody's life history. We all come from different places. And if we don't honor that, if we don't have compassion, sometimes we get judgy. Anybody else here get judgy from time to time? Let's be honest. So part of the reason why we're judgy is because we don't know somebody's life history. We don't know someone's background. So the second thing I want us to talk about is, and to workshop, is to determine the conditions favorable for having constructive conversations. So what would it take for us at our workplaces to create those conditions where conversations are more fluid, more relaxed? And then finally, the last learning objective, to utilize some of the tactics and expressions to reduce this concept called reactance. Has anybody ever heard of reactance before? Just show of hands. Okay.
Would that be the same as like triggers?
Very similar. Yes, Daphne. Yes, spot on. So anybody here have teenagers? Okay. So what happens when you try and tell teenagers what to do sometimes? They say, oh, sure, mom and dad, I'll do everything that you tell me to, right?
Or they lie and say it's already been done, and it hasn't.
Yeah. So as Donna probably knows, and anybody that has a teenager knows, if you try and control them, they will react negatively. So that is reactance. And probably the most salient version of reactance that many of us have encountered is if you say like, well, how do you feel about Donald Trump? That's going to cause a reaction, pro or con. And you just have to be prepared, especially if you say, well, why would you like Donald Trump? That's going to cause reactance. And that's what we want to avoid. So I'll talk about some tools and some expressions that you could use to avoid going there. And instead, pique someone's curiosity. So that's a lot of what we're going to focus on. I'll put a model in front of you, and it's in the workbook. So first, I'm going to share my screen. Yes, there is a little bit of a PowerPoint in here, but I assure you that won't be the bulk of what we do this evening. And again, at any time, folks, please feel free to put into the chat, or just feel free to speak up or raise your hand, and I'll make sure I honor that. So let me share my screen. So the art of talk. So the first thing I want to mention about this is this is a very shortened version for many clients on how to have difficult conversations. And I just found it to be a lot of fun, very beneficial. And let me just provide a trigger warning ahead of time. And I'm being sincere about this. We will be discussing things that some people could find uncomfortable. Okay, so I just want to say ahead of time that please give me grace, that if I say anything that bothers you, that offends you, that's not my intention. My intention is for us to actively exercise some of the content. So I just want to get that out in front of you. I may make a mistake tonight, so I hope you'll give me some grace. Okay, so with that said, I'm going to get into it. I'm going to start right off with a highly controversial topic. So think back to 2015. Think back to 2015. Are your minds there? 2015? Okay. So what colors are in this dress? Feel free to put that in the chat. What colors are in this dress? The dress that broke the internet. Gold and white, blue and silver, gold and white. Okay. So it seems like the preponderance of opinion seems to be gold and white. Do y'all remember this? Do you remember when this happened? Do you remember some of the reactions that people had? Some folks like really went crazy. It made the news. Yeah, it made the news. It was called the dress that broke the internet. So here, what I'm going to put into the chat is they actually did a study on this, and they surveyed, it was, I think like 3,000 people. And you'll see in the chat what the approximate percentages are of what people saw from the dress that broke the internet. So what I'd like to ask you all, and I'll capture some of your thoughts and ideas around this, why is it that people saw different colors, saw different things? What are some of the reasons? What are some of the factors that went into why people saw different things?
Did it have to do with some right brain, left brain dominance or something about that?
So yeah, brain physiology. Yes. Yes. That's part of it. Any other guesses? Our experiences. Ah, interesting. So Frank, I'm going to put you on task a little bit here. What do you think about our experiences that would inform that?
Am I the only Frank?
I think so.
Well, it's funny because I don't know if our experiences would dictate how we see a color.
Mm-hmm.
But if we, let's say, work outside in the sun, that could affect, the health of our eyesight. So our past work experience locations, I would guess.
Yeah, no, you're actually onto something. That's exactly right. So your experiences could be, how much time you spent in the sunlight. And this was validated, by the way, to be a factor. This was one of the factors. Time in sunlight. Health of eyesight, certainly. I don't know about you all, but over the past few years, I've had to wear glasses, and I've noticed that my eyesight is not quite what it used to be. So there is old eyes. So older eyes did see these colors differently.
It's also our technology and how well what we're viewing it on translates the color of the original picture.
Technology, yeah.
Jonathan,
Absolutely.
I missed a name that George Brooks had his hand raised.
Oh, I'm sorry, George. Thank you so much. George.
I'm sorry, my keyboard battery has died and I can't type. So
it's all good.
Yeah, like she was saying about the technology, because your monitor, like me going through technology challenges, your monitor may not be tuned properly. And then there are some people who are colorblind and they see things in different colors.
Yep. So health of eyesight, color blindness. Yep.
I'd say also perspective. And in this specific example, it could be the angle at which you're viewing something. So, because I know that when this originally came out, and there's been a couple things like this since then, where people are just adamant that it's one way or another, right? Like the shoes, they're aqua and white. They're aqua and white. They're aqua and white. And I'm over here going, they're pink and gray. How can you see aqua and white? They're absolutely pink and gray. I don't, what are you looking at? And then you come back an hour later and you look at it and you go, oh, wait, I do see the aqua and white. I do see that now. So you kind of, it shifts. And sometimes you find yourself going, oh man, tail between the legs, because now I see the other person's perspective. And then how you broach that, I'm sure you're going to get into, but just perspective, angle of viewing, where you are in the moment that you are watching, talking, looking, reading, whatever.
Spot on. Spot on. This and more. So I think you all have identified some of the key elements, some of the key factors. Also, by the way, there's a gender here. So gender, women than men, generally speaking. So also gender. And what I'm going to send to you is just a summary of some of the findings, some of the research that went into this. So take a look at some of this research they found about this particular phenomenon. Of factors. Look, I like that one. People that were likely to think the dress was lit by natural light. So who knew? Who knew that night owls would see things differently than early risers? And what was identified early on, brain physiology. So that's that last bullet point. That depending on how your brain was structured would actually affect how you perceive color. So let me ask you, what does this have to do with the art of talk? What does this have to do with navigating through difficult conversations?
You have to look at the other person's perspective and go in with the understanding that you all probably won't agree from the very beginning, but just go in with that mindset and that agreement is a sign of respect. So like you won't agree, but just walk in that door with that disposition.
Thank you. Yes. Any other perspectives?
I think you said it earlier, Jonathan, when you said intent. We have to think about our intent. If you're walking into a conversation with the intent to change someone else's mind, it's going to be a whole different experience than if you go in with the intent to understand their perspective. You don't have to agree. You don't have to bring them around to your side or come around to their side or any of that. You just have to go in with curiosity and in a genuine interest to understand their point of view.
Wonderfully said. Wonderfully said. And unfortunately, because of, we can blame a lot of things. I'm going to blame social media. So I think social media has made us much more tribal in our perspective. So we're viewing the world as us versus them. So consequently, when we go into difficult conversations, I think sometimes we're going into difficult conversations as, oh, I need to prove them wrong. Instead of, okay, how can I empathize? How can I try and understand their perspective? To Dr. Teague's point, so how can I approach this with positive intent to connect versus, oh, I'm going to show them this is gold and white. What are you, an idiot? How often have you heard that in social media? People just castigating others for their opinion.
People are confusing agreeability with likability. So I can like you and disagree with you, but I think social media has allowed people to let go of that. If you don't agree with me, you must not like me. So expletive.
Yeah, right on. I love it. Oh, and Dr. Teague, in order to walk a mile in someone else's shoes, you have to take off yours first. Oh my gosh, that's wonderful. By the way, can I use that? Is there a copyright on that?
Look, we're all sharing here. It's more from where that came from. So go ahead.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, so I now want to talk a little bit about, where am I coming up with this stuff? Like I said, it's really been over the past 2 to 3 years. Well, since COVID has given us all a lot of time alone looking into this and researching this. There are 4 resources that I would refer to, and it's in. And there's one book that was recently written that captures a lot of this information. And that is David McCraney's How Minds Change. Fantastic book, really good book. For all of us in the training and development profession, I gotta say, this one hits me in my heart. I do highly recommend it. He also has a podcast called You Are Not So Smart. It's a really great podcast. He has a lot of great thought leaders in our domain, by the way, a lot of great thought leaders in training and development. The other one, I'm sure you've all heard of this, Robert Cialdini's The Influence, a really great tome. And I'm sure you've all heard of Difficult Conversations as well. Really great book. Also, I highly recommend look up YouTube Street Epistemology. Street Epistemology has a lot of great YouTube videos of just people having difficult conversations and professionals navigating themselves through difficult conversations. It's really interesting to watch how they're able to persuade people from strongly disagree to not so sure. They talk about topics like abortion, politics, religion. I mean, the street epistemology originally started, and again, this is the first kind of trigger warning, is it originally started people that were atheists trying to that atheists are not terrible. So that's where it started, but they've expanded now. So now their topics are all over the board. Oh, yes. Okay. So we've had a lot of folks talk about Talking Across the Divide. Yes, yes, by Justin Lee. Thank you, Kelly. Yes, that is another great one. So this is what I love about these workshops. I get more reading. So my wife starts to hate me as the stack of books on my bedside starts to pile up. So, and one other one, this is again also in your workbook, and this just fairly recently came out, I would say last month. There was research, you know how some research, it's a teaser, you click on the hyperlink and it only gives you the abstract. Well, this gives you access to the full study. And that is by Michelle Bellat and Guillermo Bricchesi. And it's Bridging America's Divide on Abortion, Guns, and Immigration. And what they did is they tried a lot of these techniques that we're going to talk about. They actually created this framework that I'm going to introduce you to, that they found has been very successful to help bridge the divide. Thank you. Thank you, Frank. Okay, so I want to talk now about where do our opinions and where do our beliefs come from? And I'm going to use an example. Now, I love dogs, but some people do not. Some people do not love dogs, and it shocks me. But then when I've talked to some folks about it, it's because they've had bad experiences with dogs as children. So I want to take you through a little bit of a journey on how a lot of our thoughts, ideas, beliefs, how they are formed and how they are reinforced. So the first bias often that we suffer from is called an anchoring bias. And that anchoring bias could have come from maybe when we're even too young to consciously remember, maybe we were bit by a dog. So that initial shock, that trauma. So it could be that we have trauma from childhood. It could be that somebody with brown hair pushed you over when you were a child. So therefore you associate brown hair with being a bully. And by the way, as a brown-haired person, we are not bullies. I just want to set the record straight. Then there is authority bias. So this often comes from our parents, clergy, people that we respect, admire, our teachers. So it could be that maybe your parents said, be careful, dogs, they can be dangerous. Or you heard from an uncle that an uncle maybe had a scar on their hand because they were bit by a dog. Does some of this sound familiar? So then we have, and you all have heard this is big in social media, confirmation bias. So you see a TikTok video of somebody being bitten. See, dogs. Look at all the TikTok videos of people that have been bitten. Dogs are terrible. They're dangerous. Now, this is where we start to focus in on what makes these conversations so darn difficult. Reactance. So let's just say that somebody was bit by a dog as a child. Their parents told them, dogs can be dangerous. And then they saw a TikTok video, multiple TikTok videos of people being bitten by dogs. Well, you come around and you say, oh, come on, dogs are safe. Well, in your mind, you think that person is crazy. That person's an idiot. What are you, an idiot? Everybody knows that dogs are terrible. They're dangerous. Does this sound familiar? Can you think of circumstances in your life where you've gone through a similar journey where maybe you've said something benign and people react? What are you, crazy? I mean, just think of what's in the news right now. Roe v. Wade. Democrat, Republican. Inflation Relief Act. I mean, just pull anything out of the news and there's reactance going on. Oh, Biden. Oh, Trump. Oh, Clinton. Oh, Obama. It's creating reactance. We're in this environment now where it's almost like we have an allergic reaction to so many different things.
Well, and then it's compounded because I know your opinion on one thing now because you posted on social media, right? Whatever that may be. But because it's opposite of mine or the same as mine, whatever it may be, I now assume I know your opinion on everything else because I assume that all of those are in line. And so now it's just this inflated reaction because I'm even angrier or I'm even more allied with you, whatever the case may be, because I'm making all of these assumptions based on this one thing.
Spot on. Yeah, I love that. Yeah, you're absolutely right. We now have become mind readers. All of us are official mind readers. Oh, I know exactly what you're thinking, Dr. Teague. I know exactly what you're going to say. I know exactly how you're going to react. How many of us have heard that? Oh, I know what you're thinking.
I want to add plus 100 to what Kelly just shared, but even by the media that you share, people will create an assumption or perspective of you based on what you retweet, what you post on LinkedIn, and think they know who you are.
Exactly. Exactly. Now, the other big bias that occurs is in-group bias. The in-group bias occurs from reactance. This is where the us versus them comes in. You know, Democrat, Republican, you know, black, white, male, female. I mean, the echo chambers. Yeah, exactly right. Which further reinforces the opinion that you might have. So, you know, in this particular case, you like and trust other people that hate dogs. You know, oh, those people that like dogs, oh man, they are just crazy. Not only are they crazy, but they're stupid. And you know what? I think they're morons. And so all these other epithets start being associated with it. And, you know, people that, if you hate dogs, oh yeah, I'm with you. If you're a dog hater, you're smarter than everybody else. Again, sound familiar, right?
The algorithms don't help. Like in your TikTok example, if you've watched one video of somebody being bitten by a dog, guess what it's going to continue to show you? And to Dr. Courtney's point, if somebody in your network shared an article about whatever, and you click on that, what's it going to show you? More and more articles. So you're like, oh, good job on me. I've got this right. I've nailed this. I'm totally on the right side of things. Everything I'm reading is supporting my opinion. I must be right.
Yeah. And yeah, so Dr. T could put in too, embedding it into your subconscious. So now there's a mechanism in your brain called the reticular activating system. So now your reticular activating system, which is programmed to look for risk. So now your reticular activating system is looking for that risk all the time. I'm just waiting for Kelly to reveal the fact that she likes dogs. I knew it. She's one of them. So that results in us really embedding our perspectives, our beliefs, our opinions in dogs are dangerous. Dog owners, they're idiots, they're morons. You know, all the stuff that you heard about the different political parties, right? This is carried over into almost everything. This is carried over into, you know, sexual rights, transsexual rights, you know, gay rights, race. This is, boy, it's almost become like this mind virus that's infected a lot of folks. We're not really looking at things as objectively as we used to. And I'll just share this story with you very quickly. And I've shared this with where's Neil? I don't know if Neil is on here. Oh, there he is.
I'm
Hey,
here.
Neil. Yeah, so I shared this story with Neil. So my father, when I was growing up, my father used to hire a lot of folks who were part of a work release program. And many of these folks were minorities. And he helped build a lot of minority businesses in North Philadelphia. And there, one of my earliest memories was we went into a black barbershop. And when we went into the black barbershop, and please, again, I ask for your forgiveness. I do not intend to offend anybody. But when we went into this black barbershop, as soon as we walked in, this one older black gentleman looked at my dad and said, "What the hell is this Peckerwood doing here?" And my dad said, "I'm here to listen to you talk shit." And then they started laughing together. It was a bonding moment. It was not a divisive moment. It was a bonding moment. Do you think that that could occur now? I think it would. I don't think it would occur now. I think that we're so heightened. This idea that we're divided and, oh, we're on either side. I just don't see that happening now. So that's what I want to kind of stick a stake in the sand, which is we're in a very different time where people's reactance has been very heightened. So I want to talk about this concept of reactance. And let me share my screen here. So if you take a look at this cartoon, so what is this cartoon telling us?
We tend to want to do whatever we're told not to do.
Right, exactly. Anything that challenges our sense of independence, anything that challenges our sense of identity, we have a tendency to react to. That's reactance. When I was in grad school, I ran a smoking cessation program, and boy, I saw reactance every day. Every day. So the minute I tried to tell somebody, okay, what you might want to do is, no, ain't gonna do it. So instead, we had to slowly introduce ideas, and that way get people to come to the conclusions themselves. Anytime that you challenge somebody's sense of identity, anytime you challenge somebody's sense of autonomy, people have a tendency to push back. We don't like to be manipulated. We don't like to be coerced. So if you tell me, no, Trump is a terrible person, and I'm a fan of Trump, you have just become the enemy. And I'm not going to listen to anything you have to say.
I was listening to a Hidden Brain episode earlier this week, and they were talking about, how Steve Jobs almost didn't invent the iPhone, but because he had people around him who weren't saying, oh, you must invent a phone, it was people dropping hints like, hey, we already have an iPod with all these songs in the pocket. Why don't we put something in their pocket so they can do everything? Or when he threw his phone across the room because he hated it, be like, do you think we could create one better? So people around him were, having conversations with him and trying to plant ideas to move the company forward in that direction, instead of just coming out saying, oh, we have to do this, or this is the direction we need to go. They had to, plant the seeds to say.
Thank you, Cora. Yes, planting the seeds. So we also call that priming in the world of psychology. Maybe you've heard that. As trainers, we all do that, right? We kind of drop hints, and then later on we have an exercise about it. So absolutely, that's a key component. That's a key component. We'll actually refer to that a little bit later. So what I would like to do is I would like us to now start talking about what sort of environment can we create that's going to reduce reactance. And there have been studies done on this. And I'm going to refer specifically to some studies that were addressed in this David McRaney book, How Minds Change. So what they found is that there's 5 conditions that can create more constructive conversations in general. And as you can see here, this first one, meet regularly where we're equals. Once you put the power dynamic in there, just think parent, teenager, boss, subordinate, doctor, patient. So once you have a power dynamic, that creates reactance for many people. The other one is find commonality. So what is commonality?
Something everybody can relate to.
And Donna, do you have an example?
Well, let's see. I see the musical instruments in your background there, and I don't play a musical instrument, but I do stand up front at all the live music shows. And I'm in Athens, Georgia. So you and I could talk about music probably for quite some time.
And I'm hoping you could set me up with tickets. Yes.
Call me.
Okay. Great example, right? Finding some common ground, right? Some things that we have in common. And the other examples of, and let's just think about like an organizational setting, what could create commonality? This is a stumper.
Whether everybody's working at the same place, so something about, productivity goals or talking smack about the supervisor.
Yeah.
There you go.
Oh, yeah, of course, Neil has to enter eating and food. Yes.
Food is always a good
I'm
one.
always hungry. Don't worry.
Yeah,
Everybody's always hungry.
Exactly. Well, and to piggyback on what Donna had mentioned, one of the biggest forms of commonality in any organization is common goals. What are the targets that we're trying to hit? A revenue goal or a performance goal, a KPI, an OKR, any of those things that we could rally around. So whatever differences we have, let's push them off to the side. We're gunning for the same thing. Increased cooperation and also reciprocation. Reciprocation. So what, anybody care to share what reciprocation is and maybe have an example? Reciprocity. What is reciprocity?
It's like social reciprocity. I mean, we're wired. If I do something nice for you, you will feel somehow obligated to return that favor. So if I borrow your pen on Tuesday, we'll work it out on Thursday. It's a give and take.
Yeah, right, exactly. And that can be as simple as, oh, hey, Donna, here's a really cool pen I really like. I would like you to have it. I just like this pen. I'm a big fan of these ballpoint. It can be something very small. So anything that reflects any sort of cooperation, like we're in this together, we work together, that can be a great example of that. Increasing informal interactions, I think that speaks for itself. However, in the world of virtual, this is becoming a challenge. So I would love to hear from some of you, what have you done in your virtual environments? What have you done to increase informal interactions?
I know at my company, sometimes our manager will allow us to put lunch on our corporate card. And then during one of our meetings, we eat lunch and, have the meeting afterwards. So that's just a simple thing we can try to do in the virtual world to get to know each other and communicate.
Yeah, right on. And there, I saw Neil perk up because you referred to food there. Yes.
We've created groups in Slack, interest-based groups. And we also use donut dates where you use a randomizer to connect with random people that you typically wouldn't talk to.
Oh, that is really cool. Wow, that is really cool. I love that idea.
What's a randomizer? Is it like an app or something? I know what it means. What is it?
Yeah, it's a plugin within Slack where it says you click on it and it matches you with someone, and then you all set up a meet and just chat.
Very cool.
We did something similar. I don't know, Donna, if you don't use Slack, there is a website, it's free. It's called Wheel of Names.
Okay.
You can actually upload an Excel document if you just want to put everybody's name or whatever, an Excel document, and spin it and it'll pick 2 people. And we would do similar, not donuts, but coffee. And it would be just like a 20-minute Slack meeting or Teams meeting or whatever your, video system is. We would do that and you get to chat with people that you don't normally get to talk to.
I love that. Thank you.
Sometimes they're great. Sometimes one was enough, but now you know.
Fair enough.
Excellent. So the final one is to reduce reactance as much as possible, and specifically directing opposing opinions and beliefs. So, we're going to get into this. I'll get into some specific tactics on how you can reduce reactance, but just any reactions, anything that you can. Oh, cool. Thank you, Dr. Teague. Anything that you think that you can do to reduce this reactance. So reducing the direct confrontations that people might have verbally.
I think when you're going into a conversation, if you think it might be that way, or you don't know how the other person feels, letting them know right out of the gate, they're going to get an opportunity to talk. I want to hear what you have to say. I want to hear your thoughts. So they're not spending the entire time formulating, something that they need to say to make their point, because they know that they're going to get a chance to say their piece or say their side, or, state their position, reasoning, etc.
Yeah, I like that. So I'm older. So in my day, we used to call it the round robin. Everybody's going to get a chance to talk. We're all going to go around the horn. We're going to go around the table. Everybody will get a chance to talk. I like that. Mhm. What else? Like viscerally, what's your kind of reaction to how you could maybe upfront calm things down or get things to a point where people, sometimes we call this psychological safety.
Ask questions, probing questions.
Yes. You got it. Yeah. Exactly right. Exactly right. And let me reduce this down a little bit. Excellent. So we'll get into some of these specific tactics, but what I would like you to do, at least in your workbooks, take a look at that and maybe write down or maybe type in, what is it that you could do in your organizations to make things more favorable towards constructive conversations? Just take a minute to think about some of the things that we've already discussed. And here we've got, there's some things that were mentioned already in chat. And I'll just type some of the things that I heard too. Under number 1, meet regularly under conditions of equal status. A lot of that, again, used to be easy before COVID. So now that we're in hybrid, it's becoming more difficult. Oh, thank you, Kelly. But one of the things I would mention is, like after work activities, my favorite is laser tag. I love laser tag. But, no greater joy than shooting the CEO during laser tag sometimes, or like bowling. The previous CEO I used to work with was a terrible bowler, so I took great joy in beating them. So yeah, just think about what is it that you could do, because this again, research has found these 5 things really help create a great foundation for reducing a lot of the stress, anxiety, reactance that occurs. Okay, now I want to introduce you to a model. And this is in your workbook. It's a constructive conversation framework. And this came almost directly from this particular study. So you can read all the details. If you're a research geek like I am, you can read all the details. But these are the 5 things that they found, really help reduce a lot of the reactants. And notice what's at the center. So when you hear the word compassion and you see what's in parentheses there, openness and transparency. So what are some of the ways that we can actively show compassion? What is it that we could say to others to show that we care?
I think it's important to acknowledge when somebody's giving their opinion that their feedback is relevant, even if you don't agree with it. You can say, well, that's a great idea. I hadn't thought of that. And then, keep the conversation moving and not make the person feel bad because they shared something that maybe isn't a popular opinion or that's different than yours.
Yeah. Your feedback is helpful, instructive. Sometimes we call that validation, right? To validate that their opinion matters. Love it. What else? Any other ways that you all actively show compassion?
You have to remove judgment. I think judgment is such a huge issue, and it's hard because we all have a little bit of it. But if you can remove judgment, they will open right up.
Bingo. That's one of the big ones. It was referenced directly in the study that if you come into a conversation thinking I am 100% right in my opinions, you're kind of setting the conversation up for failure. Versus a learning conversation. Or what I like to say to myself is, I could be wrong. I could be wrong. So that's an anchor statement I like to say. I could be wrong. Another thing to consider, and this is related to removing judgment, is to always keep in mind that we're all human. We all make mistakes. And something that my father used to say, and again, I hope this doesn't offend anyone, we're all victims of our childhood. We're all victims of our childhood. If you were bit by a dog when you were little, you were a victim that may have affected you the rest of your life. If you were pushed over by a brown-haired person, that may infect your judgment for the rest of your life. So all of us have baggage. All of us have baggage. And this is a key concept that is referred to by David McRaney. Trust is modulated by the relationship. Oh, acceptance. Yeah. And Dr. Teague, if you don't mind, I'm going to put you on the spot there. So acceptance, how do you exhibit acceptance?
By listening, like just listening and not offering a rebuttal. And even, I wouldn't say even agreeing, but listening without offering an opposing thought, giving a person that brave space to share their thoughts.
Spot on. Spot on. Exactly. So at the heart, compassion, and this is more the mindset, right? That comes into the conversation. Hey, I could be wrong. You know what? I'm just going to listen. I want to learn. I want to learn about them, their background, their perspective. Then the recommendation is to first find commonality. Just what Donna did. Hey, I love music. I go to shows all the time here in Athens. What was the last show that you saw, Donna?
Samantha Fish at the Georgia Theater.
Oh, oh my God, she's an amazing guitar player.
It was amazing. Yes. So she was the last show I went to.
Yeah. So just from that brief interaction, there was a little spike in oxytocin between Donna and myself. So a little spike in trust. So now Donna is going to be more forgiving if I do disagree with her slightly. So the more trust you can build from commonality, those observations and agreements, so the more trust that's built, the more willing we will, the more grace that we will provide people. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So they say commonality is the next thing. The next thing is consent. So consent for many of us may feel a little awkward. but it's something that I do on a regular basis. If I know I'm going to go into a difficult conversation, I'm going to say something like, hey, please let me know if I offend you, or please, I may make a mistake in this conversation. I actually started this workshop saying that. Please give me grace. I may make a mistake. That's what I mean by consent. Studies have shown that when you say those things, it really opens people up. They actually do reciprocate, most do reciprocate, and they will give you more grace. They won't, again, you're not triggering the reactants. And Lisa said younger generations and COVID. Oh, yeah. Right. So COVID has kind of set us back a bit in all of these skills. That's exactly right. We need to get out there more. We need to get out there more.
Has it set us back enough, or are the organizations or companies catching up to the fact that they actually have humans that work for them?
Great point. Well, being that Neil and I both work for the same company called The Best Workplace, you might know our opinion about that. We definitely feel that a lot of companies are way behind on that. Thank you, Daphne. Yeah, showing vulnerability, yes, makes you more approachable. Absolutely. Yep. So that's a big component of that consent. And then as this model goes, curiosity. Now, this is where I want to introduce you into a slightly different form of curiosity called metacognition. Has anybody ever heard this before? Metacognition? It's another way of saying this is to get people to think about their thinking. To think about your thinking.
It sounds hard. It's a lot of thinking.
It is. But asking questions like, Neil, I'm interested. Why do you feel that way? That's a form of metacognition.
I have a tendency to overthink already.
Another form of metacognition. So what is it that you like about Trump the most? So they're thinking about their thinking. And a great follow-up question to that, what is it that you like least about him? I have found when I've had these conversations, and I know probably all of us have had these conversations, when I've asked those sort of questions, hey, so what is it that you like about Trump? Oh man, it's his passion, he's honest, he's forthright. And I'm curious, what is it that you like least about him? Yeah, I'm not a big fan of everything that he says. My neighbor who's very far right said, like, I don't like Jared. I just don't like Jared. I don't know why he trusts him. So it's getting him to think more critically about his thoughts and not just accepting things automatically. Yeah, thinking out loud. Yeah, self-talk. Yeah, absolutely. So that's what we mean by metacognition. Then finally, clarity. And I think we'd already referred to this here, doing the probing, doing the paraphrasing. Has anybody ever heard of steel manning? Steel manning is this old debate school technique. Steel manning is me giving the best representation of what I think your argument is or your contention. So Donna, if I heard you correctly, you sound like you're a pretty strong fan of Samantha Fish, if I heard you correctly.
So it's like echoing back your statement to make sure that person understands that you did indeed hear them.
Yes, it's now I provided a simplistic model. What I provided was more like paraphrasing, but steel manning is paraphrasing on steroids.
Gotcha.
So that's me taking it even further and saying, I would also extend, Donna, that based on that, you probably like really good blues guitar. based on Samantha Fish's style.
And do you play blues guitar with that red guitar behind your head there, sir?
I do very often, as often as I can. Yeah, mirroring. Yeah, another technique is mirroring behind that, and of course the close. And the close could be, you know what, the close could be, hey, thank you so much for sharing. I would love to extend this conversation if you're okay with it. Or it could be, you know, let's agree to disagree. Let's agree to disagree. Thank you for the conversation.
John,
So what I would like,
Jonathan, would you even set that in the norms that, like, when you're getting ready to have that conversation or have that agreement that we may end this conversation without closure, but can we agree that that may be something on the table, that we may not come to a conclusion?
that could very well may be, and that could be in the consent piece.
Okay.
That's, and you'll see in David McCraney's book, he talks about that a little bit. He talks about, you know, in some settings, you may have to set formal ground rules, you know, rules of engagement. Like, let's give each other grace. You know, let's agree that we may say things that we may be uncomfortable with. And can we agree that we'll forgive each other? So it could be something like that. So what I would like you to do in that workbook is you will see a series of questions. And let me jump to that. You will see a series of questions. And what I would like you to do is just kind of check off, you know, whether or not this is your style or not. And this is dealing with those 6 C's that I just reviewed. Would you be willing to try that particular technique, and whether or not you currently do it well? So let's just do a quick gut check on how much of this we're actually doing right now. How much would you be willing to try? And I'll stop sharing and give you a chance to review that. And Neil, I'm going to take a real quick break while people are doing that, and I'll be right back.
I got you. I can keep people entertained while you're gone.
Thank you. Well, they should be working. I don't want
Okay.
them entertained. They should be working.
Oh, that's right. You can find some good music.
And if you could just give me a quick thumbs up if you're done. All right, 2 thumbs from Donna, 1 thumb from Kristen. All right. All right, Dr. Teague. Okay, good, good, excellent. All right. Okay, so normally, again, there's a full class that we have behind this. So there's a full day class where we really kind of dig into this a little bit more. But for this particular talk, since we do have a hard stop at 7 o'clock, that is the hard stop, correct, Neil? 7? Yep. Okay. What I would like to do is just show you some different scenarios. And I would like you to respond via chat. What do you think would be the optimal response to reduce reactance? All right, so let me share my screen.
And I do have to 7:30, but I left 30 minutes for people to ask questions to us as
Oh,
well.
okay. Oh,
'Cause I knew
great.
this was going to be a deep discussion. So,
Oh, fantastic.
Mhm.
Fantastic. Okay, so scenario number 1, something that you may have heard over the past couple of years. The vaccine was created too fast. I want to wait to see what happens. I'm not going to get it just yet. I'm going to wait to see what happens. What response might be create a more constructive conversation? Hopefully you can see that okay. Feel free to put in chat. Think metacognition. Okay, so we have number 2. So we have 2 votes for number 2, 1 vote for number 3. Again, think metacognition, curiosity. Yeah. Oh, tonality. Ah, Donna. Yes, you kind of hit on the key, one of the key elements. Okay, so for Jackie and for George, now I'm wavering to number 3. Yeah. So Jackie and or George, why number 3? Why do you think number 3 would be best in this scenario?
I guess I come with my background, which is having been on a board of an organization dealing with health disparities in the African American community. So, and I can't get rid of that, unfortunately. And I've had this conversation, but like I tell people, I'm like, you can wait. There's always that thing about, okay, well, you can go this way, or you can go this way. But sometimes I'm like, hey, there's another alternative. There's the graveyard. But some people don't like hearing it, but
That could create reactance.
yeah, it will. Yeah. But you know.
So why number 3? So either George or Jackie, why do you think this one might be more optimal?
I think it kind of refocuses away from the scientific merits of a vaccine, which few people are really qualified to argue about or just, have constructive conversation about, and more back to things that will affect or something that you feel like you can make an informed decision upon. I can make an informed decision upon how I assess risk in this situation. And then just general, we don't want a bunch of people to die. So let's think about how are we contributing to or not that general goal that should be a common goal.
Yeah. And Right, and there is number 4, which is, okay, they didn't just start with what they have today. They're actually building upon what they've been working on for 30 and 40 years. And they just put a layer on top of it.
Yes, and to get to Jackie's point, this particular question is the most is a higher level metacognition. Is a higher level metacognition, and when it comes to diffusing emotions, the more you can get people to use their frontal lobe, not the limbic system. The limbic system is a reaction. That's that reactance. One or two, both of these, one or two, could definitely start saying, like, I could see somebody reacting to this saying, it's just like, well, this, I still think it's wrong, right? Same thing with number 2. Would you be more likely to take it if it took longer to develop? No, because I still think it's wrong. You see where I'm going? Versus this one, what do you think we should, this one's going to make me stop and think. And that's the goal here, is we want people to stop and think, to use the frontal lobe and not just the limbic system. Yeah. So Dr. Teague, it shows a partnership in thinking. Yeah. So help me understand how do you assess risk? How do you assess risk? If you were the Surgeon General, how would you assess this? What do you think might be the best steps? Okay, scenario number 2. I'm sure you've heard this one before. I trust my news sources, my experts, more than I trust theirs, more than I trust yours. So which response may be more constructive? Feel free to put in chat. Yeah, it looks like we have a little bit more consensus here. Yeah, Kristen had mentioned too the book by Daniel Kahneman, Thinking Fast and Slow. Yeah, great book. It's a huge book, by the way. I got to warn you ahead of time. Took me a while. It took me like 6 months to get through. So number 2 seems to be a consensus. So why number 2? Might this be a more optimal conversation continuance?
It opens the door for them to explain their criteria for determining who's an expert. It gives you the opportunity to see how they think, and they are probably share like one of their experiences of how they've come to that conclusion.
Yeah,
Could
right
also,
on.
I was gonna say, it could also encourage them to think about why they actually think that their source is credible. Because some people just have well, never mind, I'm trying not to judge. So it would encourage people to think about their source and whether or not it's credible.
It also provides a little bit more direction for the conversation, more context. The other two seem broad.
Yeah. Right. Well, not only broad, but judgy, right. So both 1 and 3 kind of smack of judgy. Okay, great. So one more, and then I would like us to go into, so Jackie had mentioned, Donna had mentioned encouraging them to think. Yeah, so that's the goal. You want the frontal lobe, not the limbic system, and might help people realize if they are choosing based on some confirmation bias. Yes, so the open-ended questions may get people to reflect a little bit. And so something that I heard from my neighbor, and I'm sure Sam wouldn't mind me mentioning, but something I've heard from my neighbor is just like, now that I'm hearing myself out loud, it doesn't make sense. By the way, he was a QAnon fan. If you all know about QAnon, he was hardcore into QAnon. And after we had some conversations where I just asked him a lot of questions, He's kind of now starting to say like, well, it sounds kind of crazy when I say it. Okay, one more. Maybe you've heard this one recently. Abortion is murder. I'm glad Roe v. Wade was overturned. What might be the most optimal response? Yeah. I think y'all are getting it. Yeah, you got it. Right, exactly. Yeah, so Jackie, I hear you. I hear you. Right. Viscerally, if I hear something like this, it would be tough for me to bite my tongue. However, I know that this probably would create a more constructive conversation. The reactants, because this will create reactants. Exactly, you got it. Okay, so I want us to exercise this a little bit. So we've already kind of checked off some of these tactics. Now I'm going to ask you to partner up. And as you partner up, what I would like you to do is first find two things in common. Two things in common. And then I would like you to find one thing that you disagree on. One thing that you disagree on. And the latter, what we use in class is start with politics. If you are both Democrats and you're both far left, okay, well, fine. Go to abortion. Just go there. It may be uncomfortable. And again, this is kind of a trigger alert. Thank you, Margaret. This is kind of a trigger alert. If you're not comfortable with this, I totally get it. You don't have to do this exercise. You can always exit out of your room if you're not comfortable with it. But then try immigration. What are your views on immigration? And the old fallback religion. The old fallback religion. Just go there. Just go there. You know, try to use as many of the techniques from the framework as possible. So now you have some ideas of like metacognition. So start asking questions about, so how did you arrive at that decision? So, you know, when was the first time you thought that? Does this make sense? Okay. All right, since I have the power, whoops, I forgot to put in the last part of this exercise. Pardon me, folks. Let me do that. Okay, so the goal here is try and practice as much of the techniques from the framework. So once you've arrived at whatever that disagreement is, just wade into it. And by the way, it can be other things too. You can talk about transgender rights if you want to, you know, whatever you disagree about, And we'll give you just about, so we're at 6:52. Yeah, so 10 minutes. Yeah, my director here, my compadre is telling me 10 minutes. So let me form the breakout room and we will, in some cases, there might be 2 or 3. Let me create the room. And let me
I don't
see.
have to participate to make it.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm going to move you out.
But you're bringing the snacks.
Something we can agree upon.
There you go.
Right on, right on. Okay, so I'm gonna hold on. I'm gonna add a room and I'm gonna put you in it, Neil. And let me just shift one person around to room number 1. There we go. Okay, good. Now we have an even amount. Okay, folks, so have at it. Find at least 2 things in common and then find something to disagree on and practice some of these techniques. 10 minutes.
I like this. It actually is the challenge that you want to have in a class is forcing people to grow and having a conversation, actually having the difficult conversation.
Where I. Yep.
Welcome back. Welcome back. How did it go?
Got some thumbs up, smiles. No one's angry, it doesn't seem like.
Oh, no.
I
no.
had a hard time finding something divisive.
That's one ditto.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, y'all are too agreeable. You can pretend to be decisive, you know that.
Well, and that has happened. So in class, I have encountered this before. So I've asked somebody just like, well, would you mind pretending to be the opposite? Would you mind pretending to be, pro, against, whatever, maybe? The difficulty is, of course, then the true feelings don't exhibit themselves, right? That's the challenge. And of course, the challenge for a group like this is, we're all trainers. So we have a tendency to ally ourselves with a certain a position. Let's just say maybe a little
Neutral.
liberal, maybe a little left leaning, perhaps, maybe, kind of. I could be wrong.
Maybe neutral
No,
to
yeah,
maintain the classroom decorum.
right, exactly. And that's what I was really thinking, is because we're all in the same industry and we come to a class and we have to be in the middle and project everybody, let's be in harmony and let's achieve these goals that
Right.
we know how to do that in a sense.
Yeah,
We've
if
mastered it.
right. If anything, we should be the Zen masters of creating constructive conversations, right? So let me just ask you, of all these things that we listed when you took that assessment, was there anything that was like very new to you that you've never tried before that you'd be willing to share with the group?
I think one thing that I do all of these things, and Cora and I were talking, like I come from a sales background, so I'm really good at all of this, except with the close, acknowledgement, and appreciate, because I'm already too far ahead of the game. Next steps, what's our action? I'm already thinking about the email I'm going to send as a follow-up. I need to work on gracefully closing and appreciate. I don't do that well, if at all. So I need to work on that.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that. Confession, me as well. I used to, especially as a project manager, if there was ever a contentious project management meeting, I would be like, okay, great. So this is what we're going to do next. All right. So I'll schedule the meeting. You'll get the Zoom invite. And it's just like, well, wait, hold on. Let's kind of formally close this. I want to thank people for being open, even if it was contentious. And anybody else, any of this new to you that you've never tried before? Well, I go ahead, Jackie, you're about to say something.
I think Kristen is too, so she may tag her next. But one thing that I noticed that I did that I'm not sure I totally was with yet. The idea of asking that someone forgive you for mistakes you're about to make feels a little to me like asking for a blank check. And I think I would be very open to saying something like, I understand I very well may make a mistake. Would you be willing to help me understand if I make a mistake and I don't know, and I don't understand why it was a mistake? Because I think sometimes we can say things that are hurtful and people have a right to be hurt by that. And saying, oh, well, I want to, before I even say the thing, I want to be sure you'll forgive me for it. Seems like that could get away from you.
It's a great point. It's a great point. And what I would say is, for all of these things and for all these techniques, they're like a suit jacket. So when you buy a suit jacket, you know, if you want it to look good, you have to get it tailor made. Tailor make it to your style, to what you're comfortable with. Now, I myself have been asking for forgiveness up front for a long time. So for me, it's very natural. So maybe it's because for me, it's not unusual that I'm more free to say it. So I'm more relaxed saying it. If it doesn't work for you, then I love, Jackie, what you would come up with, that particular accommodation. That makes sense. I would say that's true for all of these things. Don't just use this wording 100%. Find what works for you. You know, because quite frankly, some of these things, as I was reading through some of these things, I was just like, I wouldn't say it that way. Like there was one of them in here. Oh gosh. Oh yeah. So under compassion, you know, this is a difficult topic for me, or this conversation is hard. I've never said that, because I'm like an open book. I like to talk about everything. I mean, Neil knows I talk about everything.
Everything.
Yeah. And by the way, my kids have adopted that too. So my daughter has learned, like, oh, Dad, I realized that I just can't talk about everything at work. I get in trouble. It's just like, yeah, I should have warned you ahead of time. Shame on me for not warning you that you can't be an open book all the time. But yeah, customize all this stuff to what works for you. So we're getting pretty close to the end of the program. I wanted to see if you had any other questions, concerns, comments, sarcastic remarks. If you'd like to argue about anything,